From the Grand Ballroom at Executive Caterers at Landerhaven, thank you for joining us as we celebrate more than 20 years of presenting important and timely discussions. Corporate Club is the direct link for community leaders to connect with regional businesses, government, and nonprofit organizations. This series of programs deals with those issues and persons that impact on the lives of those who live in Northeastern Ohio. Corporate Club at Landerhaven begins right now.
No, thank you guys so much for being here. I'm honored to sit next to these three lovely, incredible ladies. I want to first introduce them. Patty DePompei is the president, University Hospitals, Rainbow and Babies Children, and MacDonald Women's Hospital. And then next to her, we have Connally, who's the president of Cuyahoga County Council. And then last but not least is Margie Flynn on the end, principal and co-owner of BrownFlynn. So I want to start off with Patty. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, as Kristi mentioned, I'm the president of Rainbow Babies and Children's Hospital and MacDonald Women's Hospital, which is part of University Hospital Health System. And I've served in that role for 3 months now. I was appointed back in October. But prior to that, I've been with Rainbow Babies and Children's and MacDonald Women's for 23 years. I started as an intensive care unit nurse and became the director of critical care nursing and assumed a number of positions within the organization. So I truly feel privileged to be in this role.
We can clap. All right, next is Connally.
Hi. And you want me to tell a little bit about myself? Okay.
Keep down secrets.
Okay. I'm an elected member of the Cuyahoga County Council, and I had the privilege of being elected president of that council. Before that, most of you know me. I was a judge of the Cleveland Municipal Court for 24 years. And I retired from the bench, and I'm sort of a historian in my part-time. I went back and got a master's and an almost PhD in American history, and I was taught at a law school, and then I decided to run for this office, and it's been a challenge for the last 2 years.
You do well. And then Margie on the end, Margie Flynn.
Yes, hi, I'm Margie Flynn. I'm, as you mentioned, principal and co-owner of BrownFlynn. My other business partner, the other co-owner, is Barbara Brown, who is here today with the BrownFlynn team. We are a corporate responsibility and sustainability consulting and communications firm. We're based here in Cleveland in our 18th year of business. Prior to that, Barb and I were fortunate to job share for 6.5 years in the corporate world at National City. I had been there a total of 12 years, and so we've been very fortunate over the years to have many wonderful experiences. On a civic side, I was asked by my fellow panelists here to give special recognition to Landerhaven. As chair of the board of the Red Cross Blood Services of Northern Ohio, Landerhaven, Harlan, and Charles donate this entire space one day each year, where thousands literally come here to donate blood to Northeast Ohio. And so we want to just acknowledge Ron Jadisky is here from UH, who's also on the board with me, but this is just to demonstrate the generosity and our thanks to them.
Let's talk a little bit one-on-one with you guys. Patty, let's start with you. Let's talk about the importance of being an emotionally intelligent leader.
Sure. Well, I think particularly in any of our jobs today, but most particularly in healthcare, we face many challenges which can be incredibly stressful. And as leaders, it's very important for us to be able to recognize cues among our team members when we're having a particularly stressful day or when we're challenged by an amazingly complex situation. It's very important that leaders are able to read cues in each team member and really be able to respond to those cues so that we can draw the best from each person. We always say, and I'm sure each of you say that in your own work environment, it takes an entire village. Absolutely. And sometimes there's situations where there's times everybody is required to be at their best, and a leader has to recognize who may not be having quite such a good day and be able to turn and call on someone else.
Do you have tips for being a good leader, and where do you start for those maybe who just got that promotion?
Well, I think first and foremost, it's really important that leaders recognize that each person has something unique to contribute. And being able to recognize the talents in each person, and not only recognize them, but really empower folks to lead themselves and to be able to take the opportunity to run their own projects, to receive recognition for things that they're especially good at.
You started out as a volunteer at Rainbow Hospital, is that correct?
I started as a volunteer at another small community hospital, yes, when I was
And now
in 7th
she has
grade.
a top job.
Yes.
And that took how many years?
More years than I care to share now. Let's say
When were you
decades.
born? What was your age?
Let's say decades.
So
Yes.
tell us, like, how was that transition? I mean,
Sure.
from a volunteer, you learn a lot, just like
You
any
do.
internship.
You do, and actually we talk about that so often. I think it's very important as a community that we encourage young people to volunteer at a number of places. Not only do they contribute to the organization, they contribute to the well-being of the community, but it gives a young person a chance to see whether or not a particular career is right for them. So for me, volunteering was twofold. Number one, it was personally gratifying because I felt that I had a lot to give patients and families who were in my care, but it also gave me a chance to really see how passionate I was about the healthcare arena.
You learn a lot when you volunteer, when
Absolutely.
you're in internship, and that kind of gives you that idea of, well, is this what I really want to
Right.
get into? Is this really where my passion is? Ellen, let's talk to you. Talk about the only female and one of two minorities in law school.
Well, when I went to law school, I didn't know I was going to be the only female in my class. And so I kept sort of looking around, and there was myself and one gentleman from Liberia. But I was so used to being the only minority in classes at college that it didn't really occur to me that I was the only girl. So it was a challenge. I mean, we all had to study, and so it was all working together, and I still remain pretty close friends with a lot of people from my law school class. So
She's got lots of stories that she can't share.
I can't share.
Say family-friendly show. Talk about the ugly. Is there a way to avoid ugliness in politics these days?
You know, I think that when you say ugliness in politics, I think it obviously gives us negative connotation to politics. And it especially dissuades women from wanting to run for office because you think, oh, it's going to be like so awful. I mean, it's just working with people, it's part of life. I mean, whether you're in a club or in a family, I mean, there's inner workings, people you don't like, people you like, people you have coalitions with, people you don't have coalitions with. So, I mean, it's just a part of the job. I mean, you know, you have to run for office, you have to get some supporters. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. It's just part of life.
Do you think being a minority help or hurt you?
I think sometimes being a minority helps because if you might get a position somewhere because there's no other minorities, but then sometimes it hurts. So I remember times when I was like trying to get on something, I said, well, they already got, one or two black people or one or two women, so they're not going to put any more. So you kind of, you don't have a shot. But.
Yeah. Very interesting. Margie, let's get to know you a little bit more. You were a trailblazer with the job sharing at National City, which is something you did prior to what you're doing in your career now.
Right. So I would say that Barb Brown, who is here, as you know, she and I really had a great opportunity, but I would say after I had been at National City 6 years, I would give a lot of credit to the chief financial officer and treasurer for being more forward-thinking in such a male-dominated industry. I mean, we're talking 25 years ago, whereby I was asked if I could go part-time. They said, that's great. I was raising children, and they were very little, and they learned very quickly that they needed the other half of me. So that's when Barb, I was fortunate that she came on board, had applied and was given the opportunity to work side by side with me. We quickly evolved into a job share. We never proposed it, it just naturally occurred. And I would say that we felt a tremendous sense of responsibility to not only for ourselves to be able to make it work so that we could have flexibility, but to be able to blaze a trail for other men and women who were looking for flexible work options. And for the corporation, we were the first to do this. And there was one other set of twin sisters in Columbus that shortly followed after us. But I think that was core to making sure we were committed to making it work.
There had to be some challenges, though, along the way.
There were. Barb, would you like to comment as well?
Who's this Barb lady?
Barb Brown.
raise your
She has
hand.
to, it's like,
Hey,
there
Barb.
she is, yes. But I would say there were many that
Yeah.
were either disbelievers or didn't necessarily feel that it could work. So I think that was also part of our feeling this tremendous sense of responsibility. We say we worked full-time, part-time, because technically the hours that we put in to make sure we didn't miss a beat,
Right.
you know, there wasn't even email back then, folks. So imagine what that was like with, you know, the fax machines with that greasy paper that we could fax our notes back and forth at night to keep each other informed. But, you know, I have tremendous recollection of one particular executive, for example. I was riding the elevator. I had just gotten back from maternity leave, and, you know, the question out of his mouth was, "Oh, hi, why aren't you home with those babies of yours?" And so it was, to me, really important that I was not going to let those things, and nor I don't think Barb either, to stand in our way, that we could do this. And we were fortunate to get promoted 3 times in the job share.
Wow.
To really demonstrate to others that it can be done, even
But-
working closely with the executives.
But you also found that balance between raising children and having a career of your own as a woman.
Well, I would say I have a particular view on balance. People say, how do you strike that balance or find that perfect balance? And I don't think there ever is a perfect balance. What I will say is that I was given the opportunity, and I think Barb, to be able to continue a career, to be able to raise a family and have time to be able to spend with them, but that it's more about being in the moment. So when you're at work, to focus on being at work, and when you're at your home, to try to focus on that, and not to feel that if it's not perfectly balanced, that you're not successful. And you have to come to really recognize and appreciate that that's okay.
Right.
And that makes, at least it made me feel
Right.
more holistic and full and excited about what I was doing.
Let's start with the group discussion. Let's talk, and feel free to chime in whenever you guys want. Let's talk about what feminism is today, in your own point of view. Whoever wants to start.
Sure. Well, we actually were talking about this earlier, and if you look at the traditional definition of feminism, it's to ensure equality for women, both economically, socially, and politically. And I think that same definition holds true today, but really, to me, feminism is really about equality for all. So whether it's for women, for men, whether it's for individuals of color, whether there's gender differences and sexual preferences, it's really about equality for all. I do know in preparation for today, all of us did some reading, and it's pretty striking that there's still amazing disparities today. So the idea that we need to continue to strive for equality for all has never been more important. While there's been progress that's been made, there's still a tremendous amount of work to be done.
I think feminism is an evolving concept, that it's not what it was when Betty Friedan was writing about it. It's not what it was in the 50s or the 60s. I mean, you know, it's not what it was when Susan B. Anthony was, you know, working for the vote. So I think it's an evolving process, but I think that you hit it on the head when you said it's equality for everyone. So whether you're a man or a woman or whoever you are, you know, that you have an equal chance for that opportunity.
Right. You know, I think in some respects, feminism, by definition, still has some negative connotations. I mean, I would certainly not consider that I was a bra-burning, you know, women's liber from back in the day, but people's connotations of that term, I think, still stick today. And most importantly, to the point on the equality, I like to view it as each individual is given the opportunity to achieve his or her vision for their life. Especially in the workplace, but also in the civic world and other aspects of their lives. And so that requires, you know, women, strong women, supporting other women, but also I think we also have to think about it from the male side.
And women have come a long way.
And I think there was always this concept that, you know, feminism was more of a white female idea, that black women had to, you know, come with this other challenge. I think that's kind of died out.
Yeah.
That we're striving for everyone.
Do you think we still have farther to go? I mean, women have come a long way for generations, you know, and where do you think we could be in the future?
Well, if you look at, they had an interview on TV a lot long ago. There was one woman, first woman in the Senate was Margaret Chase. I think that was like in the 40s or something. And now I forget, there's like 15 or 20 women in the Congress, I mean in the Senate. So we've really come a long way.
I would say that we have made strides. You know, we have tremendous women leaders in this community in Northeast Ohio that hold key leadership positions. But I would say if you look at the public sector and you look at women and minorities serving on boards of directors of public companies and or serving in executive leadership positions, while there are some examples of companies that are really making strides and in fact considered blazing a trail there, I think there's a long way to go. It's much more at a snail's pace. And those are the companies that are going to lose out, because it is proven that companies that have diverse boards, you know, have the men, not just the men, the women and minorities on their board, that they perform better. Right. And it's proven by a lot of research. So I think that over time it has to change. It just is going way too slow in my estimation.
How are your lives different than your mother's?
Tremendously different. You know, my parents were both children of coal miners, so they came from Pennsylvania, so very poor background, poor upbringing. And I could remember distinctly my mother having a conversation with my father that she wanted to go to work. And my dad was so opposed, and I was the youngest of the family. And we laugh in our family to this day. She said, "Donald, I'm just going to go to work until I have enough money to buy us a new couch." And I remember I was in kindergarten, and my mom continued working until I had my own children. So she somehow managed to buy a couch and a refrigerator. So tremendously different. And now my parents, bless them, are 83 years old. And my father said, "Your mother was such a smart woman. I am so glad she did that." So.
Yeah.
Yeah, my mom was pretty much a stay-at-home mom. She worked with my father in his business for a while, but my mom actually will be 100 in June. Everybody says she's, you know, I got good genes. I think I got Levi's, so I don't. But you know, my mom, I like to travel. I've been, you know, to Europe I don't know how many times, and all over the world, and you know, do all kinds of interesting things. And my mom doesn't do those kinds of things. So I think that just because of her upbringing and her background, that she just didn't have the opportunity. And I talk to my aunt sometimes about some of the things I do, and she'll say like, "Oh, I wish," and she'll be 102 in September. And
what are you guys doing?
I was going to say.
And my aunt at 102 just stopped driving like yesterday or something. But anyway, you know, I think about, you know, she'll say like, "Oh, I wish I could have done that." And so they say at the United Negro College Fund, a mind is a terrible thing to lose. All the things that we lost from women who could have done these kinds of things and had an opportunity, and they never got a chance to.
Yeah. Well, I would say my mom, her life was very, very different than mine in that, you know, she got married later in life. She was 32 when she got married and had 5 children in 6 years.
Wow.
And so she had her hands full with all of us. And it was just not, at that point in time, really an option. My father really was the breadwinner. And I would say my mom made a lot of sacrifices. She was a phenomenal, phenomenal mom, and she did a lot of volunteer work, which was, you know, set a great example for all of us as children. But I do think that she made her own personal sacrifices. Anyone who's a stay-at-home mom or dad, I have tremendous respect for.
Yeah,
tremendous respect for. And I think there might have been opportunities. You talk about the mind being a terrible thing to waste. You know, I try to keep my mind active, just given that she had dementia, and I think the more we can do that, it's important. And I think I would only hope that I'll have the opportunity. I don't know if I want to live to 100 or 102, though.
You got some good genes.
Yeah.
Where are you going? 104?
Right.
Is that your goal?
Exactly.
This kind of brings me to my next question, because a lot of people will say their mother is their biggest role model. Who were your role models over time? Was it your mother? Was it somebody else that you looked up to?
Well, definitely. I think our parents, both my mom and my dad, were incredibly hardworking. Were very focused on their children and on raising us. So I think your first role models typically tend to be those who are closest to you.
Right.
But I've been very blessed over the years to have a number of role models, men, women, young, old, different backgrounds, all of whom I just feel so blessed to have spent time with, and none of whom I would mention individually because there have been so many people along the way that I continue to learn from.
Yeah, I agree that there's always, you get a little bit from different people, but I just remember I was like, I don't know, I must have been like 10, 12 years old or something, and my dad took me to, it must have been like a ward club meeting or something, and, there were these ladies that were like, they were wearing hats back then, and, they were like speaking or something, and I just remembered like, I want to be like those ladies, because I remember like I used to ride the bus, and there was a gal that had like a bunch of kids, and I think she was like really poor, and I remember seeing it, like feeling really sorry, and I was like, no, I don't want to be like that person. I want to be like those ladies that were dressed up and had hats on and were speaking at these meetings and stuff. So, I mean, I remember that. So that's kind of the thing I always strive to be. I want to be up there on the stage with somebody.
Yeah.
What about you, Margie?
I agree. There's many role models that I could hold up in my life beyond my mom, who set an example for the things she did. My father was certainly extremely influential on me personally. He was very active here in Cleveland as a leader in the community, and I've always felt I've had big shoes to fill trying to stand up to the giant that he was. They called him the gentle giant. But I also would say there's another woman who was our boss, Barb's and my boss at National City, who really stands out. And I would say that she was an extremely tough boss, and yet for good reasons and not so good reasons. So you can have role models because there's things that you learn from them that you say, I never want to do that.
Right.
But then there's other things that she pushed us to really go beyond what we potentially felt we could achieve. She always had this saying, we're always doing the things we don't know how to do to learn how to do them. And boy, we had to figure out how to do them. And it required creativity, and it required, in some cases, courage and making mistakes. But in the end, we learned so much and grew as a result. So.
Yeah, sometimes you learn the most from the hardest discipline,
Right.
in your life. Talk about how important it is for people to have a passion for their work. You gotta love what you do, right?
Absolutely.
Or it's hard to get up and go to work every morning. I mean, getting up at 2 a.m. is the worst part. But nobody asked me, so.
Yeah. Don't do that.
Well, when Margie was talking about that balance with children in particular, I think it's so important. Whatever you choose to do, you have to have a passion for it, because otherwise it shows. And to Ellen's point about the woman on the bus who sort of had her shoulders down, I often think it's because people are involved in things they're not excited about. And regardless of what it is, find that passion and go for it. Be all in.
Right.
But all of our jobs are really tough. All of our jobs are going to have days where you think, I really don't want to go in. I don't want to be there. But overall, there has to be some inner light, something that motivates you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that, I was a judge, and I had a passion for it, and after, I kind of like, became a routine. And that's why I decided, I'm going to do something else. But yeah, you do have to have a passion, and particularly, really, being on county council really needs a passion, because we started out with nothing. We didn't have offices or staff or anything, so we had to really, really start. So, you have a passion for, your hobby. I have this interest in the Ohio presidents, and so I've been going around with several people to all of the homes and graves of the Ohio presidents. So I was out a couple of weeks ago, and we were like going in the closets in the attic of President Hayes' house, and the people that worked till Monday morning said, you need to get a life. But so I had pictures of like President Hayes' toilet, but
I'm sorry, let's back up.
So anyway, but you have to have a passion for it, and if you don't have a passion for it, that's where you find your niche. When you really want to get up and do something, that's when you find your niche. So I feel bad sometimes, like kids that decide they're 6 years old, they want to do something, and maybe they find out about it, and it's really not what they have a passion for. So to enjoy your job and be good, you really have to have a passion for it.
Yeah. I agree with both of you as well. And I think that it's also important that as employers, that as we're looking for talent, that we're very fortunate based on the niche that we're focused on in sustainability and helping companies to do good and do well environmentally, socially, economically, that in and of itself does help in attracting talent for people who are passionate about what we do. But one thing that we've learned is that you can train, you can teach, you can help build knowledge, expertise in a business or company, but you can't buy passion.
Right.
So that is something that as you're looking at the talent that you're searching for, without that passion, I think there's a missing element that's a key ingredient to making a successful team.
How do you develop and grow new hires now that you're in your position? And we talked about role models and things that you would do differently or the same. What's your take? Ellen, we'll start with you.
New hires?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a staff now. This is the first job with the county council. I've been directly pretty much involved in judges. You kind of get staff, you don't get to pick them. You have to have someone that's a team player. You have to have someone that's interested in the job and wants to be there, not someone that's looking down the line to get the next job.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably one of the most important things.
I think there's a number of key ingredients for a new hire. In particular, is being able to provide them the knowledge and enough information so that they can be effective in their job. But I think it's all the more important that they feel that they're empowered to do their job, that you give them enough latitude and let them know that they're expected to perform and to deliver, but give them the opportunity to make mistakes. Not huge dramatic mistakes over and over again, but in the end, that's how everybody's going to learn, and we learn together. I think as importantly is to acknowledge their successes and to thank them and make sure that they recognize that they are making a positive contribution, which really is human nature. They'll want to do better and continue to thrive. But having an open door policy and allowing them to know that they can come to you, that no question is a bad question, that we're open and receptive to hearing, and where we can help them, I think is very important.
Patty?
Yes, 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 I agree with all of the above.
Okay, we'll move on.
No, I think it's incredibly important, as I mentioned earlier, you've got to let individuals on your team shine and rise to the best that they can be. And in order to do that, you have to be comfortable and willing to allow people to make mistakes. Obviously not mistakes that can hurt others, but demonstrate that everyone makes a mistake, and in fact, some of the best ways that we learn are by making mistakes ourselves, learning from them, and then moving forward.
Yeah, I am very well aware of that. Everyone gets to see my mistakes, though. Have you noticed a different communication approach when it comes to men versus women?
Yes.
Yes.
Who would like to start that way?
Ellen's looking befuddled.
Yes. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, you have a different rapport with different people. And so it depends on the person. Sometimes you have a different rapport with women than you do with men. I do find that the men, like on the council, like they go out and play golf together. Well, I don't play golf. So, sometimes are they kind of like out, being buddies together, and sort of cutting me out of the loop. That's one of the things I get concerned about. And I guess there's a whole syndrome about that.
Do you take a different approach to it, where you're not going to go play golf, so you do something else while you're in the office, or?
Oh yeah, I tend to talk to people, a lot and keep in sort of constant, conversation with them. But also the phone rings two ways, so that people have to talk to you also.
Right.
This is where I think we can learn from each other. There's a great book that I've been reading recently, but it speaks about how women, for the most part, as little girls, we're taught in school, you wait your turn, you raise your hand, you play nice, everybody wins. And it's acceptable in school. Typically, little boys challenge and they push and me first and all of that. And again, I'm being somewhat stereotypical. I'm the mother of sons, that's my disclaimer. But that in a business world, it's important that you're able to use both styles, that you recognize how important it is to listen to everyone. But also, if your natural style is to be more soft-spoken, sometimes you got to get out there and you've got to jump in, or you're going to lose the opportunity to advocate for something. So definitely I see differences, but I think it's important to blend both.
Right.
Right. Well, I would say too that oftentimes in dialogue that men are wanting to move right to action, and women tend to perhaps be more thoughtful, and there tends to be an emotional element that can be incorporated. You talk about EQ, emotional intelligence, that can be perceived either positively or negatively, and could, in many respects, to your point, not position the women as strongly and or as committed or dedicated to whatever the purpose or the outcome that they're striving towards. So I think having a balance between the two can, hence why diversity on boards, diversity in organizations can create such a more a really positive result.
Let's talk about the traditional upward movement of a career ladder for women. Is it necessary?
I worry sometimes, and I find this particularly with younger team members. There's always a sense, if I'm a supervisor, I have to be a manager. If I'm a manager, I have to be a director. Everything has to go this way. One of the greatest lessons that I learned was actually taking a lateral position, doing a lateral move, but in a department that was totally different, and allowed me to acquire new skill sets. And sometimes I do worry that there's this sense of, if you're not moving up and acquiring that next title, that you're less than. But I think being able to move to and fro, and sometimes depending on your work-life balance needs and your own personal needs, you may need to step back a little bit. And that's okay. It's all about where you're at in your life, what your passion is. But I think it can be very hurtful to think about your career that it always has to go this way, both in terms of titles and scope and all of that.
Right.
Yeah, you need to be good at what you do, and just to strive to get something, unless if you're not good at it, if you don't feel comfortable. I mean, just because you're a good, some people are really good teachers and they strive to be a principal. Well, they're not a good principal, but they were an excellent teacher.
Right.
Some people's an excellent principal and not a good teacher. So, you got to find your niche.
Right. I would think that part of that question has to do with, well, where's the start of the ladder? There isn't a, quote, traditional ladder, in my opinion, anymore. So the fact that where Barb and I evolved to, and now one of the rungs of the ladder was a whole different ladder, which is entrepreneurship, is really demonstrates the various options that individuals have and shouldn't feel that need that they have to constantly climb. But I do feel women and men, that we should have an obligation to carry as we climb in whatever direction that we go, and help to bring up the people that are with us, because that's what really makes success.
Have you guys had to make sacrifices to be successful?
Oh, I have to make sacrifices all the
we all
time.
do,
I'm
yeah.
like, that when you're driving out in the cold at night, why am I going to a stupid ward club meeting, or why am I doing this, or,
This stupid meeting.
I shouldn't have said that.
She didn't mean it.
Right, I did.
Edit that part of the tape.
Right. But I mean, you're going someplace, or you're sitting through this long program or something, and then I think the big sacrifice I made was I went back to graduate school as an adult, and so when I went back and got a master's, and I worked on this PhD, and then someone said, well, how did you get that job at the law school? I said, well, because I went out and got an almost PhD. I'm a graduate student. You didn't do that.
Right.
And so I had that sheet of paper to say, that I had the qualifications. So when you called me, I was at the law library at 11 o'clock at night. You were home watching TV.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You tell them, Ellen.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, no, I used to tell some of my
Right.
employees, I said, you go
Right.
bowling every Thursday night, that's great, but you could be taking a class, and if you took one class at a time, you could
Right.
eventually get a degree. And so there were some that did and came back and said, yeah, I did what you, and then others that came back and said, I really wish I'd followed your advice. So there's sacrifices that have to be made.
Yeah.
Margie?
I would say absolutely there's sacrifices, and part of which has to do with going back to the work and the life, your family, knowing that there are sacrifices if you're going to continue a career and be away from family. Without the tremendous support of my husband and family, I couldn't have done what I do. And I think in turn, it really is important that it's not just about, there's certain places that events you might not be able to attend. If you're traveling, you know, there definitely are sacrifices and recognizing what goes with that. But on the flip side, I think it requires that you don't lose sight of your own personal health and wellness, because I think there are sacrifices, and I know I made them along the way, and try to, you know, really be much more mindful of that. And it's important for all of us not to lose sight of that among anything.
And the only thing I would add, regardless of what you choose to do in terms of your sacrifices, the last person anybody wants to be around is someone who's always telling you about all the sacrifices they've made. So, you know, I find I chose to make those sacrifices. That was my choice.
Your personal choice,
That was my
right.
personal choice. And because I have a passion for what I do, it's all okay. And I just feel that's really important.
What has been the key success to each one of your careers? Ellen?
What has been the key to success? I think being nice to people. I mean, I had some guy stop me not long ago, and he said that I had given him a break in court, and he had a really good job. And or I had someone said, like, you know, you helped me, or you gave me some good advice or something. So I kind of feel like it's kind of like bread cast on the wire. You got to be nice to people. I remember somebody said to me once, like, it don't cost you nothing to speak. You know, speak to people, be pleasant.
Right.
I think that's been, you know, people said, like, oh, you know, she was really nice to me, she spoke to me. I think that's really one of, I feel, it's been good to me.
Margie?
I would say there's a number of factors that come to mind. I would say first and foremost is surrounding yourself with people smarter than myself. And I think I've come to learn over the years how important that is. And it's why we have such an awesome team at BrownFlynn, and just in our lives in general, civically, board-wise, everywhere. It's very meaningful. I would say that having a tremendous support network, family, is important. And as importantly for me is having Barb Brown as my business partner and best friend for, you know, decades. And so that has been core, that it's not just my success, this is collective success.
Right. Patty?
Definitely all of the above, and as well as hard work and just the support of colleagues. I have a number of colleagues here from UH and from our foundation, and it really is about the support that we give to each other, and it makes each of us more successful than we could be individually.
I have to wrap this up, but before I let you guys go, do you believe that we can have it all? Do you believe in having it all?
Not at the same time.
Yeah. I agree.
Ladies?
I agree.
And I don't know what all means. I mean, you get, you know, if you're happy, then that's all to you.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we are going to take a break, I believe. You guys ready for some free stuff? Didn't they do a good job? Give them a hand.
Oh, good. Just there.
Oh. All right, so we are going to take audience questions. So let's start with, is this the Barbara? Yay!
Hi, I would like each of the panelists to let us know what advice you would have given yourselves at 18, looking back now. So as an 18-year-old, what would you say to yourself as an 18-year-old now?
This is going to be a crazy response, but I don't know if any of you have done this. I go back and look at textbooks that I had in college, and I think, wow, this was really interesting. I didn't take the time. I thank you for nodding your head. This wasn't crazy. I didn't take the time to savor what I was learning. I was just trying to meet that deadline. So myself to 18 would be savor those moments. I mean, they're just so precious.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think, you know, the whole thing about being nice to people. I mean, I think I was, but I've seen people that haven't been. So I think that, you know, always put yourself in the place of the other person. And I think I would have studied a lot harder in college. And I like to read, and I probably would, you know, tell people always keep reading, and always have a good dog. That's my big thing.
I would add to that I think it's more than any time I can recall, so important for young 18-year-old or even younger to really get involved in activities both at school and civically. That service has become such a critical component of an individual's ability even to get into college. I remember when one of my sons was applying and the admissions counselor said to him when he was applying for college, they said, "We're not looking for the student that worked in the soup kitchen, we want the student that founded the soup kitchen." And so I think it's so important that they really spread their wings and try to find opportunities. Denise Reading, who's president of Global Corporate College, gave a great piece of advice once that I think is so important, is whoever said you had to be invited to the table, take yourself to the table, even at age 18, and make opportunities for yourself to get involved and to get to know beyond the walls of your school.
Okay, in the back.
Good afternoon, ladies. Thank you for joining us today. I actually wrote down a question for each of you, but in interest of time, I'm going to ask you all the same question. As you move forward in your careers, how have you developed your culture in your departments? Have you improved on the ones that existed, or did you prefer to create new ones?
I think when I became a judge, they were like, mostly older white men, and they were, really kind of conservative. So I think that when I became a judge, I kind of did some more innovative things, and I talked to the employees a lot. And I used to, they'd say, "Well, how'd you know that?" "Well, I found out from the cleaning person or the maintenance people. These people have valuable information that you should always talk to them." So I think that, that's the, you kind of bring, there were very few women. I was actually the first black woman in Ohio that was directly elected to the bench. There had been some others who had been Republicans and appointed, and I was elected straight up. So I brought sort of a different flair to it. So, and even like on county council, I kind of bring in my own personal flair. So I think that's what you have to do. You bring part of yourself to every job that you have.
Currently, and I appreciate your question, we are focused on instilling a culture of safety, absolute safety, first and foremost, in each and everything we do. And I'd like to acknowledge Joyce Deptola, who's our Director of Quality. But it drives us. We start every morning talking about what concerns us from a safety perspective in the hospital, whether it's on the inpatient side or the outpatient side. And that really has instilled this culture of keeping our eyes open, seeing if there's issues in our work environment where before we might have fixed things and moved on. Now we're really encouraging people to speak up and share their concerns, and really instilling a sense in each other not to be defensive, but that if there are issues or safety concerns, we have to be open to them. So I'm really proud of the culture that we've created. It's been revolutionary or transformative, if you will.
I would say, as a smaller niche consulting firm, for us, it's important, number one, that we have a lot of team spirit and commitment to quality, and also an environment and culture of fun, and recognize that you work hard, but we want to have a culture that really the people want to come to work every day and be part of our team. And we live by what's called the I Am BrownFlynn values that were developed by the team collectively and have been refreshed over the years. And it really represents the essence of our culture. And so it's not something that was pushed down, that it really was collectively developed as to the values that we each commit to living in our work every day. And part of that involves fun and empowerment and doing our best the first time, and all the things that make the culture what it is today.
Thank you.
Okay.
It's obvious that you're accomplished and brilliant women. But if today life were to end, what would you be most proud of in your lives?
Wow.
That's a good question.
That's a good question.
I know her.
Do you know that one
She's
too?
with the Red Cross.
She knows everyone.
There you go.
Who wants to start that?
Well, you know what? I think that maybe the most proud of today that I can think of was, I think I mentioned before, I went in the federal building, the security guard goes like, I know you. And I go like, oh, what did I do? And he said, you gave me a break, and that's why I got this job. He said, if you hadn't given me that break, I wouldn't get that job. So that's, you know, and I run into people, some ladies of the night that used to be involved in prostitution will still call me up, and they're doing well, and, you know, have made a new life for themselves. So I think that's probably the thing that I feel most proud of.
Patty?
I think instilling that sense of wanting to help others. So nothing makes me more prouder than when I hear my youngest son say, Mom, I'm giving blood today at the blood drive, or my oldest son saying, I'm doing this for the Children's Hospital in Indiana. So when I look back, I want my legacy to be that, you know, because I was here, you made a difference, but a difference in helping others. And so paying that forward is really important.
Right. I would say that a couple things would be, first and foremost, my children and my family, and how they've been raised. And I think just being able to, if nothing else, set a positive example for them and for other women and men in the workforce, in what, to me, it becomes an increasingly challenging world out there. And how can they use not just their skills, but the commitment to doing good for others and making a difference in the world, to us, is very important. And I also think that if we can leave this world a better place than when we first entered it, that's our obligation, each and every one of us sitting in this room, and that's just not at our home, but also in our workplace.
And can I add one more?
Yeah.
I'm a breast cancer survivor, and I'm involved in the Breast Cancer Fund of Ohio. So go out and get your license plate with a pink ribbon on it. And we get money. That money stays in Ohio, and we give it to breast cancer survivors. So I'm really proud of that, because we get about $100,000 a year that we.
How long now for you?
Since 1979. It's a long time. I was very
awesome.
young. But you know, when you distribute that money and encourage people to buy the license plate and get that money distributed to breast cancer survivors all over Ohio, it really makes you feel good.
One last question. Yeah, go ahead.
So we talked about a little bit how it's difficult to communicate with other men in the workplace. Nobody ever talks about how sometimes women butt heads in the workplace and how do you deal with that?
Good question.
That is a good question. I would say sometimes women, we can be our own worst enemy. That, you know, instead of really working to break down barriers and recognize that we may not always communicate the same way, that it's trying to find a common ground and being able to, where possible, do your homework before a particular meeting, or if you're going to be entering in a particular public venue where you haven't met this particular person, what can you learn about the person in advance and know, you know, more about the style so that you can be more effective in your communication with her.
Yeah, I think sometimes you have an argument with men, and men the next day they're still talking to you, and sometimes women, you know, want to shut you out. So I think that's a real challenge to the person that just like doesn't want to communicate with you anymore, and like you still have to work together, and so that's always a big challenge.
I think it's important, and someone gave me actually really excellent advice several years ago, is as difficult as it may be, really try to see what the other person is seeing,
That's good.
and try to see it from their perspective. And sometimes that's hard to do when you're in the heat of the moment. It can be really hard to do, but I have found sometimes, you know, trying to understand why are they seeing it this way, and it can be very enlightening.
Okay, ladies, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for your questions. I would like to ask Harlan to get up and say a few words. Let's give Harlan a hand. Thank you for today's wonderful place.
Thank you. Thank you. You've been wonderful. And I understand growing up in a world run by women. I mean, this is a company that was built by women. When you lived at my mother and grandmother's homes, you were told what to do by women. I'm familiar with this, but I want to tell you what an exceptional group, and thank you so much. And thank you all for all that you have done for Northeastern Ohio, for our community, and for making life better for us and in our workplaces as well as in our lives. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Is it off now?
All right, we want to thank
There you go.
everybody for coming today. I hope you guys had a good time and you learned a little something from these wonderful honorees. You really were incredible, and you kind of gave that inside look into questions and things that we've been dealing with in our own workforce and our own families, and at a young age trying to figure out now, starting a family, how to conquer both. So again, we appreciate you, and we appreciate you, Harlan, for letting us take over your entire place. This place is gorgeous. The food was good, right?
Yeah.
Again, the Women of Excellence program right here at Landerhaven. Thank you guys so much for coming.
Thank you.